Good morning, staff, councillors and those listening in at home. Welcome to this Three Waters Committee meeting. We call for apologies. We have none. Extraordinary business? No. Declarations of interest? None. Confirmation of the minutes of our last meeting. Page 3. 4. 5, 6. Everyone's happy? Someone like to move, please? Councillor Todd, Councillor Lovett, all those in favour, please say aye. Carried, thank you. Okay. Basically, I'll just hand straight over to our team at the top table and they'll take us through today's meeting. So welcome, gentlemen, thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are following with the presentation again the layout of the agenda you have in front of you. First part is we are covering Three Waters operation and maintenance, mainly covered by Hernando, with projects, drinking water compliance, RMA compliance, financials and procurement, and everyone here in front of you is taking part of it. Handing over to Hernando.
Good morning, everyone. So for the general operations and maintenance, the plant operators have been busy visiting the wastewater treatment plants and wastewater plants. This month they have spent 774 hours of visits and inspections. The reticulation team, on the other hand, carried inspections of trade waste devices. They also continued the annual inspection backflow devices and continue repair the leaks that were identified during the leak detection activity, of which only 4 are remaining to be repaired. They have also attended to 135 CRMs this month. The most critical or the biggest issue this month was the wastewater pipeline at Tynwald that was overwhelmed by the volume of stormwater during the recent rain event. So we're currently investigating the sources of surcharges. We have already sent out letters to houses to again inspect whether some of the houses have been putting their stormwater into our wastewater system. And so far they have investigated a couple of houses and they have found none. So our main concern is wastewater coming from the groundwater infiltration into our system, and we are investigating on that at the moment.
So just a question, to get that volume of groundwater into the system, to me sort of tells me there's sort of a major break or something in the pipe to allow that much volume through.
Yeah, as per Hernando, we are just investigating that, and I've just seen a video in the morning in regards of inflow and infiltration into the wastewater network, which needs to be addressed, and I have some slides as well later on in the presentation for you, then we can have a discussion around that. Thank you.
So that covers the general operations and maintenance activities for that month. We move to Ocean Farm. We have already informed you earlier that we are on our final discussion with ACL regarding the taking over of the operations of Ocean Farm. We already have received a quote from them and a scope of work, and we're just going through that scope and quote, and hopefully we will be able to approve the scope and the pricing by next week.
So that scope of work and thing is not going to come through this committee, you're just going to handle that in-house?
It's mainly managed what Paul has done, the farm manager, before, though we are splitting that between various parties. One part is taken over by ACL, the other part is we are talking as well to the companies who are doing the grazing and the cut and carry. They are taking as well part of responsibilities, and Chrissy is helping out with one of the stock water people who are helping out and checking as well on the farm.
The biggest scope for Ocean Farm for ACL is to manage the health and safety of the whole farm, because there are several contractors interactions. So they will have to manage all the entry and exit of all these people in the farm. So it's quite a big task for them.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Two questions.
Certainly.
Just as an aside, with the Tynwald business over the heavy rainfall, did the sewage ponds out there, did they fill up as well?
The Wilkins Road.
Yeah, Wilkins Road.
We are still fine with inflow into Wilkins Road from a wastewater treatment perspective. We have no issues. It's mainly in regards of pipe sizing and overloading in the pipe network around Tynwald.
So they didn't sort of get to the top of their capacity?
No.
With all that rain?
No,
No,
that's all
good.
fine.
That's good. And one more question. With regards to Ocean Farm, is that going out to tender, or is this a different thing, or how do we assign on ACL to do that work, or otherwise?
ACL is anyway managing our wastewater network out there, and it's just an extension, a small extension to
for
that.
an additional whatever.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so that'll come to council, that additional dollar, whatever it
Well,
was.
but we're not paying the manager's salary anymore.
Yep.
I understand that, but I don't. Hopefully, the manager's salary is a gain, and we're paying an increment for the additional. Would be nice.
We're working through the scope of the work in the aftermath of the departure of the staff member. So that's the operational work that we are currently doing. That won't come back to council for approval. We'll let you know how we have resolved it.
Okay.
It's just straight operational capacity we're looking to put in place.
Councillor Lovett.
Right, when you're looking at the scope of the work down there, the management of the grassed area, has that been looked at as well? Because when we were down there, we looked at the grass, and it hadn't been regrassed for many, many years. It's well past its use by date, and if you want good healthy grass and using all these nitrates up growing, something needs to be done. Is that on the agenda yet? Because it should have been on there years ago.
Through the chair, yeah, definitely. So we just digged out when it was lastly resown and with what kind of grass. So we have a clear understanding what was done in the past, and we are working through that as we speak, and we are putting a program together in regards where we would start with a regrassing down at Ocean Farm. Absolutely.
As if, we had a good irrigation system down there, you could be sort of growing grasses and different crops and stuff. Yeah. Right.
Not sure.
If you wanted to peer review your maintenance program on grass, there's a lot of skill around this table who knows about that, if you want to peer review it.
Absolutely, we can share that with you clearly and get your input as well. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next item, projects here, the UV upgrade. So we are well placed. So Mayfield, Hines are already commissioned, well underway. Argyll Park and Bridge Street are under construction and will be finished before the end of the year. I'm coming shortly back to Tremor. Tynwald and Rukaya are just commissioned as well. Chertsey will be done in August and with Domain by the end of the year. Tremor is dependent a little bit on the conditions in regards of the sale and purchase agreement. I've just had a chat with Brett. That looks really positive. So we hope to get that sorted out in the next 2 weeks, and then we are able as well to start at Tremor with the UV and filtration upgrade, and this will be finished then as well before the end of the calendar year.
Thank you. Councillor Todd.
Thank you. So what I'm reading here is that all UV upgrades will be completed by the end of this year, basically.
That's
right?
correct.
Yeah.
Everything what's on that list is then finished by the end of that year, yes.
Right.
Handing over to Hernando.
So the water pipeline renewals was awarded.
Russell,
Sorry. Yes.
just on UV upgrades, has there been some regulation change
Yes, I see.
that you don't need to do UV on class 1, 2 or 3, or something's changed there? It's either in this report or I've read it somewhere else.
Yeah, it's an item I'll be talking about later in the
Okay,
meeting.
it comes up
Yeah.
later.
Yeah.
So the 2025-2026 water pipeline renewals has been awarded to Runis at 4,228,000 during the 18th June council meeting. We already have conducted our first contract meeting with them on Monday, and they are ready to start 1 July to work on this project. The rural pipeline renewals has been awarded to Fulton Hogan. We also have already conducted our site meeting with them, and they are also ready to start 1 July 2025.
Okay, so the source risk management, the risk management plans, we're looking to do this internally using our own people. But what we've agreed to do after meeting internally with officers, we're going to have a look around and see what other councils have already done. We understand that some councils have taken different approaches to the source risk management plans, and we just want to understand what people are doing. We're just concerned we don't want to overcook it and do more than necessary for what's required. So that's a bit of a waiting brief on that one. In terms of the Northeast Ashburton water supply extension, so we've completed the consultation. It does look like there's majority support for the extension, and we'll be bringing a report to the next meeting, a decision report to this next meeting of committee, I think end of July.
Just a question on that, Andy, and just from my own knowledge, I suppose. I saw one of the letters that went out, and the property has to pay a development contribution to join. I just don't quite understand that, because they're not doing the development, councillors, and all they're doing is joining up to it, but they have to pay for a development contribution to join the scheme.
Yeah, so the DC contribution, it recognises the growth component that's associated with the base scheme, the Ashburton scheme. So they would have to pay that as well as their contribution to the reticulation part of the project. It's certainly not unusual. It's the approach we've taken previously with extensions of this nature.
Thank you.
Next item, mixed-use rural water supply. So Tomata Arawai went out with a consultation document over the end of May, beginning of June period. And we had various discussions before that with Tomata Arawai, and they were coming up with some recommendations we already discussed with them. We have put a submission in by the 13th of June in regards of the mixed-use rural water supply scheme. That's mainly in relation to our Montalto scheme that we can utilize in the future. UV systems who are not certified, but giving us a really good indication in regards of water treatment, similar to other parts in that consultation document and in regards of acceptable solutions. So I shared that as well with James Wright from Montalto, and we are working at the moment through our processes around the trial we would like to do. And we will go out in the next 4 to 6 weeks and explain that to the whole community out there at Montalto.
Cool, thank you. Mr. Mayor.
That submission that you put in, have you shared that with us?
It was not a submission, sorry, maybe I used the wrong word. It was a feedback to that document we received, but we can share that with you if you are interested, absolutely. And we add that to the minutes.
Thank you.
With regards to the backflow investigations and implementation, we hired a student to carry out investigations in Ashburton a few months ago. And moving forward from picking up from what he has finished, we are contemplating of securing external sources to be able to finish Rokaya and Mitfin the next few months. And at the same time, we also, once all the investigations have been completed, we will be looking at the list and prioritize those companies and residences which would be classified as critical and mid-June, so that we can ask them to start implementing installing backflow devices. With regards to the leak detection program, last year 103 leaks were discovered, of which 46 were prioritized, and of the 46, only 4 are remaining to be repaired.
Advanced water metering trial, so we had that already in previous meetings. So we have now signed an NDA and an MOU with a company called IntelliHub, who is providing a service for us. We would like to do a trial in regards of that in Rakaya, because this is an area where we can easily ring fence our water supply system to get an understanding when we get data back. This is a service where they are providing the meters to us without any cost. We are getting as well funding contribution from them in regard of the installation. That will maybe not cover the whole installation. We will own the meters in the future as well. Will be around about 350 meters we would like to install, and we are getting data overnight in a half an hour increment, so we get really good understanding what's happening on the private property, and as well in regards of bulk flow meters we are putting in on 3 sites for Rakaya on that ring fencing as well. Really good understanding what our network and how our network is behaving.
So is there a fee then associated with that? Because obviously they need to get their money back somehow, so...
No, there's no fee apart from the installation of the meters. It's all covered under that trial. The company is pretty strong in Australia in regards of New Zealand as well, in regards of electricity meters in IntelliHub. They want to get in the New Zealand market from a water metering perspective. And what they provided back to us so far looks really, really good.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, so once they put the meters in and do the work and get the information out, have you got the resources to do something with it? We don't want to wait 2 years like we waited in Methven because of whatever. If this information is coming, it needs to be used as soon as possible.
Absolutely, through the chair, Mr. Mayor, I've just put a business case in front of Neil for an asset data analyst. So it's not only in that field, in other areas, we need that as well. We need someone who is taking care of the data, guiding us, which feeding then into renewals program and other programs as well. Absolutely, yes.
Hamish, have you...
Just to follow on from that comment of Ulrich's, what we have asked with Council's decision to go to the standalone business unit, we've asked Ulrich to think about what resources we have in the water team, what will be needed for the business unit to comply with the various regulations and work that's in front of us. And so Ulrich is starting to do that with his team, and I think this data analyst type role is the first of perhaps a number of business cases that will ultimately come through to council to give effect to setting the business unit up for success under the new regime.
Thank you. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. So this, you said 350 metres. Is that just half of Rakaya, and how many more metres would you need if you wanted to do the whole of Rakaya?
It's just nearly half of Rakaya. It's on the southern or eastern side of the railway line, which is where we can easily put bulk flow meters in to ring fence that area. And that is what they offered to us in regards of the meters we are getting for free for them.
But sorry, if I can add, so if the trial was successful and then you wanted to extend, how many more metres would you need to put in to have the whole of Rakaya Township covered?
I don't have that number handy at the moment.
I'd be guessing, but about 250 or thereabouts.
Okay, so this is just more than half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's worth noting too, the pilot that was originally offered to us was for 250 metres, and because we were trying to find a useful area to put under the for the trial, we managed to negotiate into the 350 mark.
So just moving forward with the pilot, I suppose, because when a new house is built, we say you have to put a water meter in. Will the change of that meter come about once this test, if you like, has been done and we know it's successful, then we would change the type of meter that would be put in on new builds?
Could be happen, but we will definitely come back to you after the trial or in between as well to give you updates how it will work. And I will add something through the minutes what we just received yesterday from IntelliHub in regards of the metering trial that you can have a read through as well. So we will add that to the minutes.
Thank you. Councillor Todd.
Thank you. So if this trial is successful, long term, would this be a company that we would look to maybe roll out metering in Ashburton, or if we decide to go down that track, these guys are you could say, at the top of the range at the moment?
It will be definitely a market decision. There are heaps others who are knocking on our door as well at the moment, so it's not the only company who would like to get in business with us or other councils as well. So we need to see how the trial performs, and then we will make further calls on that, and we will share that with you in regards of the costings as well. At the moment they were saying costs around about $30 to $50
$30 to $35.
ish per connection. But we can't, we don't know yet. It's part of a procurement exercise.
Hamish.
That's the key. This is just a trial.
Yeah.
And depending on the results of the trial will depend on what actions we take next. And correct me if I'm wrong, but my recollection is that the current budgeting doesn't include further rollout of meters. So in the event that the trial is very successful and we decide, council decides to roll them out in some fashion in other parts of the connected network, then there will be implications that will come through council for resource increase and budget allocation. So this trial is a step, but it's not yet certain where that leads, because we need to get the results of the trial and then work out the ramifications of that before we take any further action.
Thank you.
Handing over to Fernando.
So moving to the Rakaya wastewater treatment plant. Complementary to the recent sludge beds project, we are upgrading the control panels at the Rakaya wastewater treatment plant. So we already have received 5 tender submissions, and we're currently evaluating them, and we are hoping to award the contract to the successful tenderer in the next 3 weeks. With regards to the Great Chamber pipeline renewals, ACL has reported or has completed around 80% of the pipeline contract, and they're still hopeful to be able to lay everything by the end of June, which means that the entire pipeline would be finished and then commissioning will start thereafter. Wastewater pipeline renewal project has been awarded to Trueline Civil during the 18th June council meeting in the amount of 2.5 million, and we will be having our first meeting with them on Friday, and we're hoping that their program will stay the same, which means that it will start 1 July 2025.
Councillor Lovett.
Just going back to the sludge beds in Rakaya, we had issues with it. Have they all been fixed now, all the leaking issues, and is it all up and going and running as it should be?
Yeah, the beds are designed to have minimal leak, but during heavy downpours, because of inundation of large amount of stormwater, there will be large leaks, and they all go into the central channel that is again pumped up to the clarifier, so there's no escape, no wastewater is escaping from the system, so but it's coping.
The North East Ashburton wastewater, in line with council's request, will be looking, or the committee's request, will be looking to bring the report when it's available back to this committee, and for council to make a decision on perhaps a future servicing proposal for the northeast Ashburton area. That report's still in progress.
We've got a date on that?
I don't have a date from the consultant, but we can follow up with them and find out what their timeline is. The industrial sites, stormwater.
Sorry, Neil, sorry.
I just on the pipeline renewals, wastewater and drinking water, we let the tenders last week, obviously now they've all been let. I think information for governors would be, and I asked it when we were letting the tender, how many kilometres or metres of pipe are we renewing? And we got that answer. I think as governors we need to know what percentage of the network is that, and we could work it out, or did, and so if you're doing some replacement of the pipes, is it going to take 10 years to replace the network, 50 years, or 150 years? We do it the roading, and we know that we're going to get a new road every 150 years and some of the work we're doing, which we know is way beyond when it needs to be done, but that's all the money that's there to do it. For us to get a good handle on this, I think we need to know that work you're doing is X% of the network. So we know that the network's going to be replaced in 20, 30, 50, whatever, or 150 years. It would be good information for us, I think. What your comments, please?
So just coincidentally, we're doing some analysis for our LAP insurance renewal, and the underwriters, well, the potential underwriters are very keen on that type of information. You know, how well we're managing our networks, how often we're renewing. So we have got some stats. I don't have them in front of me right here, but I'm happy to share those with you. It just provides a percentage renewed over the last sort of 5 or so years. So we can certainly provide that.
Yeah, I think we might have asked for it when the tender was let, but my rough workings out, it's 50 years for water and 75 years for wastewater, if I've got the numbers right. So it puts a different perspective on how long it's going to take for everything to be renewed. Because if it was going to be 150 years, we'd say too long. And it's 75 years too long. Don't know. There'll be more questions would come out of it, no doubt. And the other thing is the thinking about pipes that are failing, and you've got that colour, what do you call it?
The dye.
No, shading of where the leaks are identifies a pipeline that's nearing the end of its life, because there's so many repairs being done on it that it shades red when it's been a lot.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting also to know how old is that pipe. If there's shading red, is it a 10-year-old pipe or is it a 120-year-old pipe? It would give us more confidence too, knowing if it's a 120-year-old pipe, it's done well, but it definitely needs replacing. If it's 10-year-old, something didn't go right. That sort of information would be useful, I think, for governance. Yeah.
And from that, would you or should you be able to make the assumption that moving forward with today's technology around the manufacture of pipes, that the lifeline of a pipe now should be longer than the old clay pipes or the galvanised pipes or whatever was used in the past?
Look, I think that's a fair comment. The only concern I do have is that one of the things, if we go right back to when Wix did their analysis, they were quite critical of the lifespans that we were providing to our pipelines, and were suggesting that they were too long as it was. So I don't know whether the modern materials would be something that might drive a longer life or not at this point.
Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. Going back to Rakaia, sorry, but the switchboard that we're upgrading, can you tell me what that does, what that's all about? And I see we're spending 200 to 300k on it. So what was where was the acceptable mark as far as goes?
That budget came about, I believe, through cost savings on the sludge bed project, didn't it?
Yeah, so I'm not privy to the tenders that have come in. So what we're talking about is the estimate at this point. We're talking about a switchboard which is over 25 years. I think the site was commissioned in 2000 or 1999. So the switchboard's upwards of 20 years old. A lot of this technology just has moved on significantly. From where we were having to program things with a screwdriver, we can now dial things in with more accuracy, and it gives you a lot more functionality in terms of the operation of the site.
Thanks.
Just through the chair, just to respond to the mayor's question regarding the asset life and our planned replacement. That's typically in our activity management plan, where we look at life and that information we could expand further. However, going forward, I think what you're referring to is a GIS heat mapping sort of visual assessment, which would be useful. So going forward, we could probably make better use of technology and have our information from our activity management plan available on our GIS platform. So we can look at heat maps and age of assets. So it's something we could certainly look at.
Hamish.
Could I, with your permission, Mr. Chair, just ask a question of Neil? The activity management plans, they come before council when we're going through the process to prepare for the LTP, don't they? So,
that's correct. We have workshops leading up to the long-term plan where the activity management plans are discussed in workshops. Yep.
So it's probably just a reminder that those plans are important because they're dictating the work that unfolds over the ensuing years. So as councillors move through their terms and we get started on the next LTP, for perhaps this committee in particular, the attention on the asset management plans and dictating the amount of work that's going to come would be an important focus, I think, for the ongoing work of this committee, because that's dictating what we do next, and that would be a really good time to understand the sort of questions the mayor has asked around age of pipes, portion of the network that's included, because it'll show you through the planning process what portion of the network is contemplated to be done. Perhaps more important at the planning stage than at the point of letting contracts, because they're just really reflecting the plans that have been put in place. But either way, the information I think will be valuable, but just look out for the asset management planning information.
Moving forward, won't the Three Waters side of the asset management plan will have to be broken out of that anyway, won't it? Because it'll have to come into that standalone business unit, so it won't come under the overarching asset management plan of the whole council.
I've got a slightly different view, but that'll become clear as we get into those sorts of processes. I think the standalone business unit is still inside council. It's still a council function, and that was the very reason that councillors decided to go that way and not a CCO. So yes, we will have to show it, and yes, there will need to be really clear focus on the water assets through our processes, but I'm not completely sure that we'll have to have it right out of one LTP or one document and have a completely separate document for something that is actually remaining inside council. But that will become clear as the business unit starts its operation and various conversations, guidelines and other activity clarifies exactly how the business unit should function. But it is still inside council.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted just to add, data is crucial for it in regards of performance of the pipelines and as well the conditions of the pipelines, the materials of the pipelines, what just mentioned. So this feeds all in decision making in regards of when renewals are required.
So just on that, because in an ideal world you follow your asset management plan and your budgets are all programmed and at appropriate times and all those sorts of things. But then we have a situation like we did in Tynwald, which may be throwing up something that we need to go and spend some money on within the next financial year. How do we juggle that money around, or is there capacity in the system to do that sort of thing that wasn't, but that pipeline may not have been budgeted to be replaced for 10 years maybe. So how do we handle those scenarios?
Well, we would definitely come back to council in regards of proposals and how this could be financed. So, for example, what we are doing here on our renewals program for next financial year, we see some savings in that, and we would then come back to you in regards of we see additional work needs to be done out of that program, and we would like to get your input on that and your decision making. Thank you.
And also around budget time, when we're talking about the dollars, we know what work needs to be done and then how we're going to pay for it. We need to be clear, is it depreciation funded or is there loan funding in there as well? We need to make a decision on that. We need to be clear how we're funding it.
It might be a mixture.
It could be a mixture,
Yeah.
or we might say it's got to be all depreciation. Well, I think we need to make that decision and have good information how it's being funded as well.
Thank you, Hamish.
Yes, completely agree, and the language of that is important, and I just refer again to the presentation that Helen gave to Council through the annual plan. Depreciation is an accounting entry. How we fund the renewal program and the work via the amount of rates that is struck is the key issue. We've historically talked about funding depreciation, but Helen's made it clear to us that the depreciation is an accounting concept. It's how we fund the renewal program that is the key focus for both debt levels and the level of rates. So there's just some subtle changes in the way we're describing those things, but the concept is, as the Mayor outlines, is consistent with what we've talked about in the past, but we're just starting to change the language a little bit.
To add, if there is additional work that does pop up like that, in the report where we present it to Council, we would identify possible ways of paying for it, either by using savings in the same sort of activity or by reprioritising the program and delaying others to replace that in the program.
Thank you.
The risk prioritisation for industrial sites work, that's sort of ongoing. We've been negotiating with our consultant to give us some assistance in the site visits. I do have a confession though. I did indicate in the agenda that we were going to circulate the framework with councillors separately, and I'm afraid it slipped my mind. So we'll fix that later today. We'll have it circulated on Stella for council to review.
Thank you.
So Te Mate Arawai have released their levy structure for the next 3 years, and they've provided information on their website for that. I'll just quickly, excuse me. So the levies that have been confirmed for the next 3 years are shown in that table. Interestingly, we've actually got sufficient money in terms of budget provision made, although we haven't got any provision made in stormwater, but given the scale of it, I think we'll be able to fit it in under our existing budgets. I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect we'll have to show that funding split in any ring fencing that we have to do for audit. So that's just give you a scale of the final fees. I just do want to talk just quickly about the Network Environmental Performance Report. So this is additional regulation report that Te Mate Arawai do, but it covers the 3 waters. Apparently the report for the 23-24 year is due to be released soon, before the end of June. So we're just giving an undertaking that we'll circulate that report as soon as we have it, and we'll provide some commentary at the next meeting of this committee. The other work we've been doing in preparation for our asset revaluation, every 3 years we do a construction unit rate review, and we also look at our asset lives. This work is still ongoing. We're looking to, we've had the draft report, and we're looking to just sort of test the consultant with some of the rates they've come back with. The asset lives hasn't changed much, but some of the proposed increases to unit rates could have a dramatic impact on our valuation. So we just want to test their thinking and their model. We've also got the most recent tender rates, which we can take back to them, and they can perhaps refine the work just to make sure that it's representative for this district. Right, the drinking water compliance. So as requested at the previous meeting, there was a desire to see the rules expanded out. So I've shown that in Appendix A. So it's now, it now comprises about 5 or so pages. So every rule is now listed. We have corrected a couple of minor areas though of no major consequence. But what we have done is we've shown colour-coded orange rules are going to be addressed through capital upgrades. Blue are rules that are impacted by procedural management, that back office stuff you've heard me mention. And green rules are things that are still under consideration, so like the Montalto, and we've got a new one in the Hines area. So the table, I don't expect you to read it, but the table on the slide there is a roll-up of all the non-compliant or less than 100% compliant rules, and showing that colour coding we talked about. In terms of the focus for what we've chosen to focus on in terms of those procedural management ones, at the moment we're focusing on the ones where they're applying to all schemes. On the likelihood is that if we put a bit of effort on those ones, we're going to get more benefit across more schemes than one, say, a rule that might only apply to 1 or 2. So we're giving, that's sort of a broad prioritisation that we're using internally. I do want to point out to the stuff around the green ones, the ones that are under investigation. Hakateri water supply, beg your pardon. That water supply has been sitting very quietly, slipping under our radar, but it turns out there is some pH rules that we're going to struggle to meet. So we are going to have to do some work around pH correction, but we just don't know the scope of that at this point. So we're doing some work internally just to work out how much work's required to address that item. But again, because of the focus, we're trying to get more bang for our buck, and we're looking for those bigger items.
Apart from the Hakateri one, are there any others that you see significant problems for us with?
No, well, Montalto is the other one that we're investigating, and that's sort of ongoing. It's probably worth noting that many of the ones in blue that are the sort of the procedural ones, we actually are working our way through those now. Like the backflow project that Hernando mentioned, that's going to hopefully address about 5 rules in one go. So we're looking at that. We're starting to cast our eyes further afield and look what other councils are doing around things like hygiene, meeting those hygiene rules. There's some good opportunities to borrow from other suppliers what they're using and being able to implement that. So it's a bit of a work in progress, but we're making our way through it. The other report that's coming out is the drinking water regulation report. So this will come out probably in the same timing as the Network Environmental Performance Report. This one is solely on water regulation, and it's the 4th report that Te Mata Awa have released. And again, same format. We will look to share that as soon as we get it. I understand the Chief Executive will get an embargo copy a few days early, so we'll share it when we can, and then we'll summarise and provide some comment on it at the next meeting. I do want to talk about the changes to the quality assurance rules for level 3. So these are rules that are currently being reviewed. The rules are for large supplies, i.e. greater than 500 population. So that captures our 3 big supplies. Officers of the team did attend a online pre-consultation meeting with Te Mata Arawai on the 28th of May to discuss the proposed changes. A key aspect of the changes is the inclusion of rules for virus treatment. Basically, the current rules don't address virus as they currently exist. Beg your pardon. The current bacterial infection rules have a relatively high disinfection contact time requirement as a proxy for virus treatment. The new rules will require virus treatment or a barrier in the treatment system for large supplies alongside anything else required for bacterial and protozoa compliance. The virus barrier can be provided by UV disinfection or chlorine disinfection with adequate disinfection time. And basically the format for the changes, Te Mata Arawai are expecting to consult on the changes through August and September. So that'll be their formal consultation phase. But they're looking to adopt the rules by the end of 25, and the new rules would take place from January 1. So the upshot is there was a risk that the virus treatment rules could have made life really difficult for us. They could have required an additional range of UV that we aren't providing for. It turns out that they're targeting the range that we're currently required to meet for protozoa anyway. So that's a very good, news aspect to it. I suppose the other part to it, and we're going to talk, the Mayor asked the question about the level, sorry, I've lost my way here. Yes. Bear with me. Just getting my notes. Yeah, so class 1 sources. So there is an option to be exempted the treatment barrier, and that would be for water sources that are from deep groundwater that meet the requirements of what is known as class 1 water. So there was a thing we used to have called secure groundwater sources. That disappeared soon after the Havelock North stuff. It appears that it's coming back in some form, but they're calling it class 1. It is still going to be quite an issue to meet. It's not a formality, and chlorine for residual disinfection will still be required. This is a change from the current rule, which basically means that the class 1 would be an exemption from protozoa only. As the scope of class 1 is expanding, as I mentioned, the source will be deemed class 1, but it'll have to be included to include sampling for viruses. And they were indicating potentially turbidity, pH, and conductivity, which would have to be online monitored. So again, it's not a formality. There would be some implications to keep it. We think that it's worth doing, but we don't have to make that decision right now. The timelines for it are such that it would be basically, it would apply from the 1 July 27. But yeah, we're going through the process of re-establishing this criteria, or at least the criteria as we currently know it for Rakaia. And at the moment it requires 36 days of daily testing. We attempted to do that in January this year, and because the 36th day of testing missed the lab cutoff, we have to start it again. So it's not a formality by any stretch, and the new regime will almost certainly include virus monitoring at least quarterly. I understand from the team it's probably in that order of $5,000 per quarter to do the full round of our Class 1 bores. But again, we don't have to make that decision now. It's just a case of alerting the committee to it.
Mr. Mayor.
So does that mean the UV things were put on Ashburton or putting on Ashburton Rakaia were not needed from the deep wells?
Well, as we sit here right now, they're needed. The current rules are they're needed.
Yeah.
So
this rule.
Under the rules that potentially are coming, they may not be required. But if we were applying a good supplier multi-barrier approach, we would still be advocating for the inclusion of UV anyway. Because Class 1 is so difficult to maintain, we think that it would be better to stay with the protozoa, the UV as our primary approach, our primary barrier. But if we could get Class 1 as well, that just is another barrier. It's another level of protection.
So the deep wells don't have protozoa in them, do they?
Well, we don't know. That's the whole issue around risk and what you're comfortable accepting.
Yeah, I understood that they don't. It's the surface water or shallow surface water can have protozoa in it. The deep doesn't. But, and if you didn't do UV, you've still got the chlorine to do the job.
Yeah, so the tricky part about the chlorine particularly for Ashburton, is that we don't have sufficient contact time. Because we don't have reservoirs, we're not treating chlorine into the system and then allowing it to do its magic in the reservoir before it goes to the consumer. So we're adding chlorine at the treatment plant, and it's literally could be very shortly with a customer. So that's why we don't quite meet the rules for contact time.
For Ashburton Rakaia would meet the rules.
Ashburton Rakaia would be a different story, yeah.
We got a tank, yeah.
Maybe in addition to that, what Andy just said as well in regards of multi-barrier approach, the risks that in the future something is coming up in regards of the sampling we are taking or the 36 days we need to do consecutively, we are out of compliance fairly quickly. So the UV gives us all the time the protection we need in the future as well.
So if you had UV, you could take the chlorine out then. For Ashburton, because it's not got contact time with
Yeah, there's still a requirement for residual disinfection.
Still.
Yeah, even so.
Yeah.
Councillor Cameron.
Oh, thank you. Just going back to the protozoa thing. Protozoa, as I understand, is like Giardia and they're all found in lakes and rivers, and I don't know, and they're found in sexually transmitted infections and all sorts of things like that. I don't know that they're found in deep water wells, but I understood we spent a lot of money, as per the Mayor, on putting the UV filters in because that was a requirement that we demonstrate that we don't have protozoa to Te Mata Arawai. Have I understood that correctly? And now you're saying Te Mata Arawai are now saying, okay, you may not have to spend that money on the UV filtrations. Is that what you're saying? And you might be able to do something else to demonstrate lack of protozoa.
I think what they're saying under these new rules is that there is an opportunity to take a different pathway. So yes, there could be a different pathway, but what we as officers are saying is that pathway is quite complex. It's not a given, and as soon as you fail one element of that pathway, your scheme is non-compliant. Whereas if we retain UV and work on a multi-barrier approach, it means that one or other doesn't have to be perfect because we're getting it through the other option.
So Te Mata Arawai have some science or some other way of demonstrating that protozoa live in deep water wells, or are our wells not deep enough, or we don't know the full information? It must be one of those scenarios that we don't know or understand.
We did. So the primary issue with protozoa, as I understand it, is that in order to test for protozoa, you need 20 litres of water. Mm-hmm. So I think if the regulator was wanting to be draconian, they would say, well, you're going to have to test for protozoa to confirm it's not present. But that's an unreasonable test because it's 20 litres of water and only about 2 labs in the country, will do it. What they've done instead is, well, in order to address that risk, we want UV.
Yeah, okay. I understand that. Didn't understand about the 20 litres of water, but I understand that seems a massive amount to test and, blah, blah. I would be disappointed if our water regulator in New Zealand, who we are all running around and meeting the standards and raising our bore heads and putting in membrane filters, all this investment in the future of our quality water, is not responding to scientific evidence, but insisting on demonstrating, unless we are missing something. There might be some clever clogs in Te Mata Arawai who says, no, you're missing something. That seems like a pedantic, draconian space for me, if it's not necessary. And then they change the regulations, which albeit we have to demonstrate whatever. But this is not giving me a sense of security as to that we're on the right path,
It's an absolutely fair question, and we will ask that back to Te Mata Arawai, and we will provide the answer back to you as well. No, absolutely. Yes.
And one more comment. When we met with Te Mata Arawai at a conference, I think you were with me, Richard, they presented in a small group, and they seemed very reasonable, pragmatic people, like the clip-on filters and the rural schemes and all the rest of it. I thought, well, that seems fair. But I'm disappointed in this, and I would expect more leadership from them in this matter, in this particular regard on this issue.
Yeah, I think also though you have to remember their response will be commensurate with the risk of the scheme. So they might be being very pragmatic about rural agricultural water supplies that serve 30 properties versus this particular area where we're talking large supplies. So we're over 500 people and we're potentially talking about city supplies.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I accept that, but a person's a person. One person in a rural scheme is the same as one person on Chalmers Ave. A person's a person. So I can accept that, but I don't really accept it. I think that's mean of them to consider like that, small-minded.
Hamish.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just two comments I think that occur to me while this discussion is going on. Firstly, we're taking council and this committee's clear directive to be compliant very seriously. And so what I'm hearing Andy say that class 1 category is hard to get, very complex, and one little trip up will mean you'll fail, and that'll mean your supply is not compliant. So if you take that as appetite for risk around the instruction to be compliant, it seems to me that the UV treatment is an eminently sensible approach to being compliant. And regardless of whether Te Mata Arawai might be about to show an alternative pathway, it looks like a difficult and complex path that might trouble council if we didn't maintain compliance because of the complexity of that process. So I think you should be comfortable that the UV investments that council has made over the last couple of years is exactly the right approach to having compliant supplies. I think the second issue that occurs to me, Mr. Chair, is we've long talked about the reform and we've long talked about the ongoing likelihood of changing standards as Te Mata Arawai gets set up, and of course we've still got the Commerce Commission to have their particular lens over delivery of these services. And this is just another example. Both the Class 1 water source and the virus treatment seem to me to be really good examples of compliance is never going to be one and done. It's never going to be we've ticked it and we're now all good. We will have to remain vigilant for changes in regulation. We'll have to remain continuously abreast of changing perspectives on the science or new science that emerges. And the regulator will no doubt continually ask us to think about new and improved ways to remain compliant. And I think that's the signal that came through both the previous government's reform and is really clear now, that whatever we set up needs to continually work hard to remain compliant, and that those standards are going to increase, and the costs of doing so will inevitably increase at the same time. So I think those are it's quite good examples of the future world we're in. It will never be one and done.
No, you don't know what you don't know. I mean, until Havelock North, we didn't know that sheep around a wellhead was a thing. So, yeah, you just... Yeah. Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. Andy, as far as the Class 1 category goes, do you have a list of viruses that need to be sorted? Like, is norovirus included, and is there a list?
There will be a list. I don't have that. We probably won't see too much of that level of detail until the consultation information comes out in August.
Okay. How long does UV treatment plant or whatever last? How long can we expect one of the lifespan? Is it 20 years?
It's the light itself that changes, isn't it?
Lights.
Yes.
Yeah, the lamps are, I mean, they only have they're consumable basically. I think they only last 6 months or 12 months, whatever. But the units themselves, I think we're depreciating those over 20 years or 25 years, something like that.
Okay. Can you see us, I mean, the rules seem to be ever evolving. Are we going to get to a space where it's just too expensive for us to meet all the rules, and we say we're going to provide you some water, as watery as possible, but you have to tap on one of those units on the side of your house, and maybe we subsidise that? Do you keep an eye on where we're sitting?
Look, I don't know whether we've got that option. I think we can only comply with the rules as they are. So.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the comment, Councillor, that there is no choice as a public supplier but to obey the rules. And that's the caution that both the previous Labor government and this national government is giving local authorities. You have to comply. You will have to invest what you have to invest. Are your structures, are your arrangements suitable for the compulsory meeting of the standards, not, well, it's got a bit hard or it's got a bit expensive, we can't do it. That is absolutely not an option.
And that's why they're wanting councils to look at the way they deliver that service, and if it is cheaper by joining up with 3 others, that is why they are encouraging that type of procedure as well. So, yeah. Councillor Wilson.
I liked Andy's comment of multi-barrier approach. That is the logic you use. I think Councillor Cameron concerned about rural supplies. I'm a rural supplier. We have 10 houses and we've had UV treatment on for 10 years now. And every 12 months you just change the light. And if I look up Mr. Google, he says that it's an effective way of inactivating and killing bacteria in water as no known bacteria or virus is resilient to UV light. This includes pathogens such as Cryptosporidium and Giardia. So if we're a responsible water supply, we would just be putting UV in anyway, because if something goes wrong, which things do go wrong, it's your backstop, it will stop. So you would not consider not doing it. And I don't know, every rural supply should be doing it too. Even if they think they can get away without it, they should be doing it. It's just good practice.
Councillor Mackel.
It's just listening to what you were saying about the UV and that sort of carry on, that it's not really needed now, and we've invested so much capital into that. It's a real concern moving forward. We aren't even off the starting blocks, and already we don't need the UV. The authorities, yeah, we have to invest what we have to invest, but going forward, if we invest in things like UV and all of a sudden don't need it, it seems the authorities are all care and no responsibility. So what protection have we got in the future with this as we're about to crank into the new regulations?
The UV is needed straight away at the moment because these are the rules we have in place at the moment. And as said before, we will go back to Tomara Arwai with that question in regards of the future approach on their rules. What does it mean for councils who have already invested into their UV system, would that make a change in their view as well? So we will definitely ask that question. Thank you.
Just before we go into the RMA, do people want a 10-minute break? We're programmed to go right through to 12, so. Yeah, okay. So we'll break for 10 minutes. Please come and join us for a cuppa. Thank you all. Welcome back, and I'll just hand straight back over to carry on through. Thank you.
Thank you. We've had no new compliance monitoring reports since the previous meeting. In terms of current status, there are 3 consents that are still assessed as non-compliant action required. So that relates to Ocean Farm and the exceedance of the overflow limits on that wetland bypass. They require wastewater treatment plant management plan update, which we have already addressed, and the Ashburton Stormwater Network Industrial Sites Assessment, which is obviously work underway at the moment as well. We do still have a significant non-compliance, and that's the main consent for Ocean Farm. The cause of this is related to the wetland work that we had undertaken to do in a previous action plan. We only got part way through and we haven't progressed them. It also relates to the effluent quality reporting exceedances and other been through the committee the previous meeting around the wetland and the like. Evenness of land discharge we've talked about, and also the exceedance of the nitrogen loading rate. And the other element that ECAN are not happy about is a sort of a long-standing one where our control system doesn't record the time and volume to each block. So in terms of addressing this, we did reach out to Environment Canterbury to understand how we can move forward. We were hoping to get some latitude around the significant non-compliance to allow us time to do the wastewater strategy. What they insisted on was that we provide them with a action plan, a revised action plan, if you like, and identify some things that we can do to work towards compliance. So we've prepared that action plan, and ECAN have seen the first draft of that. It includes actions around the wetland investigations. So the purpose of those investigations is to determine whether or not there's an opportunity to bypass either partially or fully the wetland, and in so doing improve the water quality, which is a bit ironic. We're also looking to align the sample program with the strict accordance with the consent. There was one sampling run that was 1 month adrift of what was required in the consent. For the sake of expediency, we've just decided to align it. There was no benefit to us to keep fighting that fight. We are proposing to do a further round of fecal source tracking on the wetland, just hopefully to reinforce the view that it's the birds that are causing the deterioration. And we're also looking to implement some changes to irrigation management around identifying ponding and making sure that we're doing what we need to do there. Obviously, the big ticket item, and certainly the focus for us, is to prepare the wastewater strategy for Ashburton District. That's listed in the action plan. We've suggested increasing the frequency of nitrate monitoring. So all of our calculations are based on monthly sampling of nitrate, and we do have a view that our calculations could be refined by having more data points, and potentially it may drive things down. We would like to progress the flow meters on each irrigation zone as a project, and also we're looking to upgrade the monitoring of the wetland overflow weir. So this weir is what is driving that bypass non-compliance. Because of the crucial nature of that information, we want to make sure that we're getting as accurate as possible.
We have some questions for you, Andy. But first, were there any extra challenges down there after the rain event? And, you know, we still have to spray irrigation on even when it's raining because we need to, you know, keep it moving through the system. Did that add any challenges?
The challenges are only that we are getting further ponding down there. Absolutely, yes.
Councillor Lovett.
And one thing I'd like to know is, is there a time frame or when are we going to start looking at a new watering system? And I'm looking, we talked about pivots, which we know work far better than the pop-up risers and things, or a mixture of both. When are we, they haven't put deadlines on that, when we're going to start looking into this and actually taking action, because this has been talked about for years down there.
I think one of the things that we desperately would like to do is to do the strategy first. The risk of taking one solution in terms of, say, the irrigation and solving that, there is a risk it might not be the right answer ultimately if the strategy doesn't bear that out. So we were trying to get some latitude from ECAN not to respond and have to rush off and do an irrigation upgrade, say.
Because, I was looking at, we've got some good pivots going up the road at Rolleston. Are you looking at their system with that and how economical and how that's working out for them as well? Seem we've got to look at this in the future, and we've got a pivot out at Rakaia. Are we kind of looking at all these solutions on their doorstep?
But maybe in addition to Andy, I think it's important at first that we get a really good understanding the performance of it and where we are really lacking. It's not only the sprinklers, that's the network itself where we see leakages coming from. So this is why we need the zone meters and get a better understanding and do the nitrogen calculation in between, not only on a monthly base. And we have today in the afternoon our first meeting in regards of setting up a document to go out on the market with an EOI, expression of interest, to help us out on the Ashburton wastewater strategy. So that's as well part of it.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, on strategy for the wastewater, you're only just starting that work now. It's identified some months ago. Things need to speed up. You're non-compliant here. You're not doing the environment any good at all. You need to put a priority. The strategy is still not going to stop the environmental damage that is potentially happening, but it will inform what needs to be done. So the strategy must be number one priority. And when have you got a date as when it will be completed, the strategy, and then we can start implementing it on some of these things?
The idea to have the strategy in place by the end of the year. In addition, other requests coming in, and I think at our next meeting we will give you an update in regards of our trade waste customer, possible trade waste customer next time round, which will have an impact on the treatment plant and as well on the whole loading we are getting, and we need to get a good understanding of that from a treatment perspective and what's coming then from a quality perspective as well out to Ocean Farm.
Yeah, you're going to do E. coli testing on the wetland, as I heard before. Are you going to DNA that E. coli to identify whether it's human or avian?
Yeah, yeah, that's what it's eDNA or whatever it is testing. Yeah,
to say where it's coming from, who it's coming from.
Yeah, well, the last
what
time
species?
the last time we did that exercise back in 2022, I think, it was identified as avian source, which proves the bird theory. We just suggested that in the action plan to ECAN that we're happy to repeat that exercise just to make sure that that's still the case.
Yeah, it's probably going to tell you what you already know, but we need to spend some money on fixing it, not testing it. The old saying you can about weighing the pig. You weigh the pig that many times if you got to feed it.
The only problem is we haven't budgeted any money yet either. Yeah, Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. Great saying, Neil. The wetland, has it ever worked, Andy? Did we do initial testing once when it was put in way back when, and was it ever a good thing?
I'm sure we did. I don't have that in front of mind at the moment. I know the issues around the wetland have been an ongoing issue for at least 5 or so years, maybe even longer. So it's certainly come to our attention over the more recent times.
Okay, because I've been on site in our district where wetlands on private farms are working very well. So maybe also once we discover the DNA, do we then look at maybe some of our planting in there, and is it attracting the wrong sort of birds, or and is maybe that some of the issue as well?
Yeah, so at the request of the committee, I did reach out to Brett Painter from HH Wet around what they're doing for bird management. He has provided me some information around some of the technology they're using. It looks like it involves laser technology and a solar panel, so it's obviously self-generating. We'll have a look at that. If it proves that birds are still the issue, that could represent another action that we can perhaps use that with for ECAN.
Councillor Wilson. Oops, sorry, further review. Councillor Wilson.
With respect to nitrate testing, do you do that at one site, or do you do it at many sites when you're testing?
I believe it's done at a couple of sites, but it's, like I say, it's only a snapshot once a month.
Have you looked at real-time nitrate? 'Cause you can get those real-time nitrate testers that sit in the HH Wets, trialled them and that sort of stuff, because that would give us a curve and all the rest of it.
So initially, the first implementation is to just put in weekly monitoring. That would be grab samples, but we are looking to see what online equipment is available, because that would be first prize.
And the next question was with regards to the water metering. So, if we got the water metering right up to speed, as with what arrives at the place and all that sort of stuff, because obviously with the high groundwaters in that whole zone, effectively, because that helps to understand what's happening with water coming in from other sources into the whole system, because that affects your capacity and your performance of your whole system if you've got other surface water that's coming into stormwater systems.
We are knowing directly what kind of wastewater flows we are getting in through the network itself, but then you have as well the inflow and infiltration through that network. In addition, the rain event on the ponds itself at the treatment plant side, and then as well in regards of the rain event on the wetlands. And this is really, really difficult to calculate that. But at the moment, as I said, we have some issues in regards of ponding because of the massive load we are getting through the rain events and through the irrigation itself. But we haven't done any exercise in regards of how can this be mitigated or so.
The last question, if that's all right, it's to do with the industrial site assessment. I think we brought it up last time. You were going to the top 10, I think it was, and talking to them, because will that be disclosed, even if it's in public excluded to protect their privacy, will that be disclosed to the Ward Committee? Because it's quite a sensitive issue if you're a big supplier, if the council finds that it can't help you, or, you have to reduce, it's quite an important thing for us to be across politically, is the word I'd use, because, the 10 biggest users are probably the 10 biggest employers too in Ashburton.
Yeah, so the industrial sites risk assessment for stormwater, that's the information I was meant to make available to the council, and I haven't. So that'll be circulated later today. As far as the top 10 sites, what I was intending to do was provide council an opportunity to make comment on the framework, and assuming there's no comment or any changes, then we would look to roll the model and provide separately, we would provide the actual top 10 from that framework.
Councillor Todd.
Thank you. Just regarding nitrate monitoring, the readings obviously still within acceptable levels, and/or when do we start maybe looking at new bores to go deeper if need be, or is that any time on the horizon or not?
Sorry, is this in relation to drinking water? Drinking water nitrates?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we nothing's changed from previous updates. So Timwood is one of our known sites where we're forecasting that to be a problem in the next sort of 4 to 5 years. I think the other supplies we've retired Phaeton because of the concerns around nitrates on that supply, and I'm not sure where we're sitting at the moment for Heinz. I think that was another one that was sort of in that zone that needed to be looked at. So apart from Tynwald, which is the most pressing, we haven't done any other work on that at this point.
Okay. Mr. Mayor.
Just on the nitrates, those tests you do on the wells, should you supply it to the committee and give us trends on what's happening with our water wells, drinking water wells?
Yeah, absolutely can do. There's we've got some generated reports in the system that we can run.
They're not publicly available, are they?
No, but we've made them available to the public when requested. It's not secret information by any stretch.
No.
If our one of the things that we had been contemplating is how much water quality information we make available on the website. We do see that we probably are underutilising the website for that disclosure. So a couple of the areas we're looking to share information is the annual chemistry analysis that we do on all our supplies, but also nitrate was the other one because it's a topical issue.
Yeah. And on the board, increase the frequency of nitrate monitoring. What is that? Water? Is that soil? Or what is that? Just expand what you're doing there.
Yeah, so it's the wastewater flow that comes in, it's the treated wastewater once it's going through the wetland or above the wetland. And we use that as a calculation for working out our loading rates on the land itself. And because we only have 12 data points, what we're worried is that we may be using a data point which is missing the variability. And we expect that with more resolution of the data, we might be able to drive that number down.
Or more accurate to what, yeah.
Yeah, it's certainly more accurate, yeah.
Yeah, if it goes down, fine, but if it goes up, it's fine too.
That's right. It'll be more accurate, absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so the financials, I'll just work through a few highlights or lowlights depending on your view. So drinking water operating income, we're sort of indicating that the development contribution income line is around 218,000 above the full year budget. So we're expecting that to be a permanent favourable variance. We're forecasting a final favourable variance of overall of around 220,000. The reason for this was the DC fee that was used in the development of the LTP didn't include the actual fee structure that was ultimately adopted. So that's been corrected for year 2. Drinking water operating expenditure. So expenditure on the maintenance contracts, which is our ACL contract, that's taken a slight, it's sort of pulled back a wee bit. It's a wee bit less than it was originally. So it's 24% now, or 425k above the year-to-date budget. As I've mentioned previously, this is driven by the reactive work that is now being incurred. And we're also looking at the impacts of the leak detection work that's obviously impacting on it as well. We're continuing to monitor this, but we're forecasting an unfavourable variance in operating expenditure overall of in that order of 250,000. Wastewater operating expenditure, so expenditure on the Ashburton maintenance contracts, that's 27% or 190,000 above the year-to-date budget. I think that's an improvement on what we reported last time. This is again driven by the reactive works, and when we did our CCTV works for the year, we identified quite a bit of additional maintenance work arising from that. So those costs are coming through. We're actually hoping now, previously we were forecasting unfavourable variance in wastewater, but looking at the way Methven and Recire are performing, they may partially offset the unfavourable in Ashburton. Stormwater operating expenditure, this is currently below the year-to-date budget, and it is basically tied to that industrial sites assessment project being much later in the year. We are making headroads into that project, so there will be some expenditure coming through right through to June, and we will probably look to carry over some funding in that to allow that project to continue into July, August.
So just a question, Andy, with the situation we had in Timor with stormwater getting into the wastewater system, how do you budget that when you're rectifying the problem?
It's very difficult to deal with that. I mean, the reactive maintenance that we allow for is it's based on historical expenditure, so we try to take a bit of a rolling average. But yeah, big expenditures relating to big events, we can't anticipate that.
Councillor Wilson.
Going forward, obviously now that we've got a new type of, we run our infrastructure differently because we're in-house as that's the new model we run under. How will you get the budgets right for going next year? Because looking back won't be as robust as what, looking forward will need to be. Because obviously our budgets are sort of beginning to be formulated probably soon, I suppose, because, we as councillors get them sort of after Christmas, technically in January, so you must have had a lot of thought of them soon. So how will you predict next year's budgets, from now sort of thing? So we don't have this, but to factor in the extra costs we're going to face in the future.
Yeah, I think it's there's no doubt about it. It's a bit of an art, and when I say I look back at rolling averages, I certainly do. But we also look forward to what the program is providing us. So if we're looking to commission new infrastructure, we have to allow for an increase in operational costs associated with that. So those allowances are made. One of the big improvements that's been made to the contract with ACL is that consumable costs are now visible to us. They weren't previously visible to us, but they are now. And that will allow a lot more refinement around the future budget and what the implications are going forward. So we're looking forward to taking advantage of that information. We're also discussing with ACL the potential to get access to their actual base costs. They were indicating they were prepared to make that available to us as well, again, to help that budgeting exercise.
And maybe, the additional work what we are doing in regards of CCTV inspection for wastewater pipelines and the leak detection work what we have done now will give us as well a better indication for future look at how the network performs, and specifically when we are looking here a little bit closer into Tynwald from a wastewater modeling perspective, which give us as well some more indication where money needs to be spent to upgrade or renew pipes.
Councillor Todd.
Just when we put the figures that I'm looking at here, say for period ending 31st of May, up on the screen there it says ending 31st of March. Am I looking at something different?
I beg your pardon. That should read May, but
Should do. Okay.
I'll check that.
Just different figures as well, that's all. Like drinking water year to date, on my screen is 8246.
It might be different, yeah.
Yeah.
I may not have updated the slide pack.
Okay.
Okay, so just a couple of other matters just to mention. Drinking water CapEx expenditure is effectively reflecting the timing of the filtration UV upgrades. As I mentioned at the previous meeting, we're forecasting a variance of around about that 8.8 million. I'll probably have another look at that. I see the variance report is due in the next couple of days, so I might be able to refine that down again with the more recent information. And of that 8.8, we're forecasting we'll need to carry over about 5.3 to complete the project. Montalto budget, the carryover funding there, the capital budget there is looking to be carried over again, just to support our ongoing investigations in Montalto.
Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. Just with the carryovers, is there any inflation built into that with regards to the cost? You know, we've seen the carryovers and we've made some decisions based on not carrying over and because the cost escalations. Are the carryovers a true reflection of the actual cost, or are they going to have to be revisited in terms of because of the inflation and cost of equipment or whatever?
The carryover is only, we can only take a carryover if there's money in the remaining in the budget. So the carryover will reflect partly what we can carry over physically, but also our needs going forward. So if we anticipate that we're going to need more money, we would have to bring that to council to ask for more money.
So you're carrying over some capital expenditure because the work wasn't completed this year for whatever reason. Presumably next year that work will be, unless it's contracted in at a fixed price, and in my experience, short term on council, there's always contingencies and it never is the same price. How do we budget for that elevated increase in cost? Is that going through the annual plan, or how does that get?
Yeah, so most of the carryovers that we are looking at are they're already contracts in play.
Okay, so they're fixed.
So they're
they're
fixed.
$1 million, you're $1 million. Okay.
Yeah, so it's usually just tidying up contracts towards the end of the contractual period.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
With this, the end part of the carryover, when something's approved by council, I understand that there's a budget that's approved. How long does it normally take between that and it's tendered and the contract's let? Because effectively, that's the risky time, you could say. But once it's let, the carryover's fine because that's just the contract running its, it could be a couple of years, could be whatever it is. But is there some contracts that we approve and then they take quite a bit of time? Because I'm perhaps alluding to the Montalto one where we haven't even, he let a contract sort of thing. We're sort of, that's an unusual one because we're taking in money and it's not being used for, if it's used for repairs, great, but it's sort of potential, but it could end up being a lot cheaper. We're not sure. So when does that budget align, or the, with the process where it gets to eventually?
Hamish?
I think that you've described it well. There's probably two types of carryovers in the CapEx space. One is to complete work that's already contracted and there is no risk to an overrun. It is, as Andy said, still subject to that money existing, but the carryover will be sufficient because it's based on the contract. Where, however, there's work that was contemplated in the budget set, but for various reasons the design might be changing, or we're having further thoughts about what the right thing to do is, or there's reasons why work hasn't properly gone underway or been tendered, then there is a very real risk that the carryover will ultimately be insufficient for the project to be done for that money. Less applicable in the water space perhaps than other parts of council's business, but the theory still remains. If we haven't got the work underway, then there is certainly a possibility the price will be different to the carryover amount, and that's when we need to come back to you for additional funds, hopefully through an annual planning process, but sometimes the timing of that means we might make a special request of council separate from that process.
Property springs to mind where there's been a couple of carryovers that have gone for a couple of years.
That's right, and you can't inflation adjust it because that wasn't the amount that was budgeted. So it will only ultimately, in the longer things get carried over, the portion that was in the original budget will, in most likelihood, only be part of what is needed. Having said that, the Montalto is a really good case where the solution for Montalto is the delay is almost certainly going to result in a cheaper solution than the one that was originally budgeted because of the work that is happening in and around the mixed use rural supply, and the solution will actually cost less. So it can go both ways, but usually it doesn't.
Cool. Thank you.
So just finally, rounding it out, wastewater CapEx, so expenditure is below the year-to-date budget, and this is down to the Rakaia sludge beds and the latest start to the grit chamber project. And as I mentioned previously, due to favourable tendering on those projects, we're still forecasting between 2.5 and 3 million as a favourable variance. And again, I've got to do the variance report in the next few days, so I'll hopefully refine that down with a bit more information. So basically, the sludge bed projects is being dealt with, and the grit chamber pipeline renewal is on track, I believe.
Councillor Wilson.
Can you, whereas with the new bridge, you know, we're obviously working through that process at the moment, and if we decide to put we have decided, I'm not 100% sure, put an extra pipe across for water, that's not the bridge's problem, that's the Three Waters problem, effectively, to fund it. So where's that water, and I'm at the right place for the waters one, where's that pipe costing and that decision at, effectively?
Well, the money's in the budget, so we've got the project in there. We're actually just doing some work around modelling to confirm the pipe size, and we're looking some advice on the pipe material for the bridge situation. And yeah, we're hoping to have that information provided to the bridge project team, the NZTA group, shortly, so that they can start including that in their design work.
So how do we identify that out? Because as a rural I'm not part of this, right? A lot of ratepayers don't pay anything towards the Three Waters, but they do pay a lot towards roading. So the roading, that split off, how will that be decided? Because you don't just tack a brick, it's not just, you're not just buying the pipe, you're buying the extra cost of putting it on, and there's quite a lot of engineering cost and stuff. How does that identified out so that we can understand the benefits of that pipe and what it's actually going to cost to put across there and whether it's a need to have or a want to have, at the end of it all?
Well, okay, so we would argue it's a need as opposed to a want, but in terms of the split out, that would be something that would be borne out in the NZTA, their scheduling, the way they package it up. Because we're paying the bill, they will be very at pains to make sure that it's quite clear what we are paying for. That would be how I would see it.
So last question. So we'll have all that information when we come, when we're in the bridge discussion as well at an early stage, because obviously that, if we don't know what we don't know at the moment, but it's a huge amount extra number that goes in that bridge project, which has to be borne by a certain group of ratepayers.
Hamish, you might have
I'll just point out, council has approved it. So this idea that we're going to revisit it and examine the numbers and council make a decision is not actually correct. It's in our budgets now because council approved it to be included. There was discussion and there was some. I recall there was various views expressed, but that piece of work is proceeding. It's in your long-term plan. It's in all our planning documents, and I completely accept the need for it to be clear and for the right group of ratepayers to pay for it. But there isn't a process whereby we're coming back to you for a decision.
Neil may be able to clarify a bit more as he's across both projects.
Yes, so in terms of the bridge project being managed by NZTA project manager, they will clearly define the cost of the water pipeline in the schedule, in the contract document and design documentation. When they come to council with their proposed draft costs, we're hoping to be about November, December. They'll be able to expand on the cost of the overall project and identify our costs relating to our section of the road and our pipelines as well.
Coming to any other business. So I put up Tynwald stormwater and wastewater update. I think you are all aware of the situation we have out there, starting off with the stormwater situation. I think you have seen as well what was in the Guardian yesterday in regards of the concerns people have who are living close by and with a playground adjacent to these stormwater detention ponds. I was out last week and I was out on Monday together with Neil, and we had a close look at it. So both of these ponds are pumping back into the race on, when you look on that slide, into the left. And we had on last week and on Monday around about 30 centimeters of water left in these ponds. When you look into that photo here, this is pumped. We need to look into the regime in regard of the pumping and the right sizing of the pumping. We need as well to think about the protection of the downstream network when we are pumping into the race, because we have other people downstream who could be affected of it, so that needs to be managed closely. And this is a photo where you see as well the playground on the left-hand side. The pond level is heavily related to the high groundwater level, so ACL has done a little bit of a trench and measured where the groundwater level was last week, and it was 1.05 below the surface. So pretty high groundwater level, and I come back to that photo shortly. Neil and I were as well here at Tarbottons Road, Kelburn Place, where we have a similar pond. That was the photo taken on Monday as well. You see here that this pond has the same level, nearly what you see on the other side of Tynwald. So with a high groundwater level, we need to pump more on that one to reduce the water level. But as I said, we need to be diligent in regards of the downstream network as well. We understand the concerns the public has in regards of kids playing on that playground, specifically when you see that basketball hoop and maybe a ball could roll into that stormwater detention basin when it's full. So we are suggesting as well, what we have done internally, to put a fence line along the side where the playground is, so a pool fence line 1.2 meters high, to the bottom where the photo was taken roundabout. This gives us still then the possibility to maintain and operate the ponds correctly, because there are the both access ramps to get into the pond for mowing and keep them clear. So this is in regards of the stormwater issue at Tynwald at the moment.
Moving forward, do you think it's a good idea to have retention ponds next to a playground? I mean, I assume this was land that when the subdivision was done was the bit that was gifted to council as...
The idea was these ponds should be mainly dry. So it's a stormwater detention and not a retention pond, so it should be a dry pond. That is how it was designed for. As we see at the moment, it doesn't achieve that, and this is why I said we need to look into the pumping regime as well, and as well on the downstream side of it too. Yep.
To have a retention pond that's meant to be dry doesn't seem to make sense to me, but that defies logic, but yeah.
Maybe in addition, I haven't put a photo up, but Neil and I, we were as well in Bearbrook, and we had a look around that pond directly beside the playground as well. Water level is different. The water level out there is around about 40 to 50 centimeters, what I've seen when I was out on Monday. It's not fenced off at all. It's just planted with flaxes around it, but not planted. And it's pretty shallow going in as well, so you can't really compare these sites.
No, I mean, there is no barrier there at all, visual or...
Oh.
No. So, Councillor Cameron. Oh, sorry, Neil, were you
I was just going to say that most of our detention ponds are dry within a day or two of heavy rain. We've just had exceptionally high groundwater down, particularly in Tynwald. So those ponds haven't typically been this bad after rainfall before. This is probably the worst case we've had over the last, or since they were built. So it is an issue we've got to now deal with in Tynwald specifically. But our other detention ponds, and most detention ponds, drain within a day or two.
Remembering we're talking climate change tomorrow, so this is obviously an impact. So, Councillor Cameron.
My point exactly, we are talking climate change, Carter's Creek, Remington, Remington Drain, all those other things are coming up. But I remember, and I hate being a know-all, but I remember going out with Bert out to look at that blimmin' playground, and we agreed, which annoyed me as well, to have it more than 400 metres from the community, which is the guidelines, because it was going to be next to the swale, and the kids would enjoy running in and out of the swale and playing on their bikes and all the rest of it. And now we're going to fence it, so it's going to be an ugly eyesore, because I guess it'll have to be a kid's impermeable fence, like a netting or something, so the kids can't get into the pool, into the pond. I misspoke. Into the pond. Can we not, is there no other, can we not dig a deeper hole or put like a rock gallery, or is there nothing tricky in the engineering department that can mitigate that? So that whole thing was just a white elephant, essentially.
It's not going to be fenced completely. We're just planning to put a fence along the top of that bank, just to have a barrier between the playground and the pond. But when the pond is empty, most of the year, it can be used for bicycles and for playing.
How will they get? They'll just drive around to the front here.
Yeah, it's just going to be one straight line on the top of the bank on the left. You will still be able to get in along the sides. This is just to protect people using the playground and kids at the playground. That's the plan, is the barrier just for the top of the bank.
That's correct, yes.
And
No words. Once again, no words.
But when the groundwater is high, there's no amount of digging deeper that will relieve the problem.
No, that's right. You're going to go dig deeper a metre, then you're going to
Still going to fill up.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I've read or seen somewhere you've been trying to pump it out. Is there a pump in place permanently there?
Yeah, there is a permanent pump in place. When you go back to that slide, you see that the pump is, when you look on that slide, on the left-hand side between the two ponds, and then it's pumping into the race. It's a permanent pump. It's a permanent setup.
Just push a button, it goes.
Correct.
Electrical. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Carolyn's right. We moved that playground to let other things happen. We had an on-site meeting because councillors were concerned you were putting a retention pond next to a playground. We showed concern, and as Carolyn says, we don't have words to express now. It's a sort of I told you so, but others knew better, and this is what we now have. But yeah.
Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. I was going to mention that as well, because I think we heard from the developer about that retention pond, and I clearly remember him saying that the ponds up in the Camrose development in Methven are great fun when it snows, because kids can go and play in them, and we were kind of sold that sort of story. But I'm just wondering, in the future, will we be because we're going to end up covering this cost for the fence, I guess. It's not the developers. They've paid their contribution, so they're not going to be covering the cost of the fence. So is that something that we could look to in the future? If there is a fence required, maybe getting it in earlier rather than later.
Yeah, I fully agree. So we need to be more diligent and more risk adverse in that regards, and here as well what the general public has to say in regards of their concerns when a playground is close by. When coming back to that photo here at Talbotton Road, so we have this directly adjacent to private properties. There is no fence, nothing on that side as well. So the question is how far you will drive that in the future. I think that was designed as well as a dry pond, but with that high groundwater table, it's not doable.
Councillor Walton.
As the chair of the Stockwater Transition Group, this water's been pumped into a stockwater race, effectively, Langdons Creek, and we're looking to shut that. We get out of supplying water from that next year. So how does that relationship work? Obviously, because it's stockwater. I look at all the farms that are rated, the properties that are rated, and they go right through this area. So they're paying to clean it and maintain it and monitor the water and everything. And this water's just been pumped in there from a subdivision. How does that relationship work?
Yeah, so the stormwater implications of any particular race, intake investigation and potential network closure would be looked at on a site-by-site basis. The view for this particular site would be that it wouldn't be too difficult to relocate the outfall up to Lagmore Creek itself, which is a drainage channel, for the sake of sort of 50 or 60 metres of pipe work. So the pumping function could continue to operate quite nicely. The bigger picture, I suppose, from our point of view, is whether or not there's an opportunity to provide some sort of drainage below the residential D zoning area out to Lakemoor Creek as a permanent discharge point, and that would solve a lot of these problems.
Councillor Mackel.
I realise that it would be inconvenient for the council for a fence. Just probably pointing out the obvious. Water drains away in a day or so. It only takes a few minutes for a child to drown. Would it also be an idea to be able to put in a siphon pipe so it could siphon downstream, so we didn't have the cost of pumping, etc., and it could possibly activate itself, siphoning away?
A really good idea. That was my first intention as well, to find a spot where we can drain the ponds through gravity instead of pumping it. We are looking into it as we speak, and as mentioned before, on the southern side with this residential D, maybe there's an opportunity for us as well to alleviate the issue we have with these ponds in the future. But we are looking in all of the options at the moment.
So,
Councillor Lover.
I'm just going to add to this that it was last year it was brought to my attention from the parents that were living down there to come and have a look at these ponds, because the kids had been playing in the mud. They had water in them, and the kids were going from the playground and sliding down into this. And it is where this subdivision is, over the back, that paddock. It is a known wet area in Tynwald, and you're always going to have water in these. But I was just going to ask, what type of fencing are you going to? Is it a post and rail, or are you doing a more solid one?
A pool fence size, 1.2 meters high.
Like, so just thinking if you softened it up with some native planting just between it would look actually a nice feature in there amongst all the houses if we could make a good job of it.
Mr. Mayor. Oh, sorry, Hamish, did you?
Oh, I didn't
Yep.
necessarily go next, but there are a lot of water bodies in New Zealand that aren't fenced, and our own water race network comes to mind, and I think the issue here is the proximity of the playground, and that there is an increased risk, we think, of inadvertent chasing a ball or playing around and slipping in, and that's what we want to try and mitigate. So creating a barrier in this instance seems to make sense, but there's an awful lot of other water bodies throughout the district and throughout New Zealand that aren't fenced and presumably never will be. And we saw that when we had our own example of a drowning in the water race and the dreadful tragedy of that, and how would we potentially mitigate that in the future. And there's just not a fencing system that can eliminate all risk. But in this case, there is a playground that's close, and that's the one, therefore, that we want to concentrate on and create a barrier to reduce the risk.
We do have another playground in Ashburton close to a water body, and that's in Braybrook. There's a playground right next to the duck pond, which is a permanent water body. We don't have a fence. However, there's a bit of a gap, and there's planting on the bank. So in this case, it's just a lot closer. We did consider whether we could look at planting or something like that, but I don't think we've got enough space. And the fact that there's a basketball hoop, the likelihood of the ball bouncing and ending up in there is much higher.
Mr. Mayor.
When it was first put in, there was a resident living below who says doing this is going to flood me out by pumping out and pumping into the race, because the race that runs past his residence used to flood and has flooded. Have you had any contact with anyone about flooding because of this or below this?
Yes, I have personally. I've met with him recently. He actually gave me a call when the rain was coming down and the flooding was at its worst. I went down and met with him, and we've looked at the impact it's having on his paddocks and the culvert at Gutarton Road. So yes, we are considering what we can do there and how we can address it as part of this whole big picture.
His name was Paul, was it?
Yes, that's correct. Used to work for ECAN. A lot of knowledge about the stormwater in the area, and it was very useful meeting with him. And
Yeah, a good year or more ago, he raised this with me, and
yes,
assurance the engineers know what they're doing. And he begged to differ with me at the time.
Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. Just with regards to this whole floodwater management business, are we allowed to, the floodwater ultimately, if it's in a drain, ultimately ends up in the river, I'm guessing, or goes to ground. Are we allowed to direct floodwater to river, or is that outside ECAN's consent, or we need a consent, or what's the process with regards to that? I mean, presumably a lot of the drains end up, they all go to the sea, don't they? But
Yeah, look, I don't know. I mean, if it's urban stormwater, it would need a discharge consent of some nature, but I'm not sure about stormwater drainage in the rural or semi-rural areas. We'd have to explore that when
because
the matter
we're
arises.
pumping out of that swale, come playground and hazard, pumping it out into a drain that's going through the stopwater race.
Well, that's being pumped out currently into a race, into a council
Into a
control. Yeah.
And where is that going?
Makes its way down country. It may eventually end up in Wheatstone Drain.
Yeah, be good to get some clarity around that as part of the, because that we've got, as Neil mentioned, we've got the climate change strategy tomorrow, and a lot of that's about management of floodwater. Perhaps we need some clarity around what the rules are and what we have to do to mitigate that.
Yeah, I think stormwater and land drainage is an area that we're going to have to put a lot of attention
I
to
think so.
going forward. Yeah.
Because Richard's got a good point. We're exiting stopwater races. Whoever takes them over or not, something we'll have to manage this stormwater.
And also the overlapping with ECAN, Environment Canterbury, with their streams and land drainage in rural areas. So it's a big area that we need to focus on going forward.
And I get the vibe that ECAN aren't entirely clear themselves on some of the issues. So we need to put their pedal to the metal or whatever it is, and come up with what is required and some clarity around that for us, because it's clearly going to be a big problem going forward.
Councillor Wilson.
It is quite ironic that if you go 10 metres from this playground, look, if you turn and look the other way, there's a open channel we're pumping into that has steep sides and is a much higher drowning risk than a low battered pond. So to me, fencing it's a bit makes you feel good, but really from a health and safety point of view, the real risk is behind you. So I think I would question, why are we spending a whole lot of money fencing it when there's greater risks? So we're better to shut the playground in the meantime until it drops, because that would reduce the risk immensely. So I don't know. I just question, if you look the other direction, there's a open drain there.
Councillor Mackel.
When there's houses there's going to be little kids running around anyway, whether they're in the playground or not. I was just thinking outside the box a little, putting a fence down one side of said pond, retention pond. Would it not be an idea to ring fence the playground with a basketball, netball type fence so it's secured?
Good question, but I think what I heard so far as well and how kids behave, they are rather running around wherever they like, and they would get access to it as well. It's with that fence what we are promoting at the moment. It's really mainly in regards of the basketball hoop, and that balls who maybe roll over into that pond are protected, that this is not happening, that kids are not really need to run to get their asset, their ball back, and that's what we are looking for at the moment.
That's what I was suggesting, to contain the playground area rather than just putting a bit of a bluff up on one side of the pond and leaving the rest open. fence the playground. And if mum and dad want to let their kids go and read the paper or whatever, so they don't have to keep their eyes on the kids all the time, they're contained in the fence. They're not going to quietly go over the edge into the pond and potentially drown.
Hamish?
Look, it's a theoretical solution. I think the problem is that with the basketball hoop, the fence would have to be so high it would actually be a hell of a fence to stop the ball bouncing over it and rolling down into the water. Whereas a fence across the front of the water is likely to stop the ball and cause someone to hesitate. I mean, they're all options. We could take the basketball hoop away, and then the risk is also eliminated. But it's trying to do something reasonably quickly, reasonably easily to mitigate the risk. And I think a barrier fence at the top of that bank is the quickest and easiest thing we can do to acknowledge that there's a risk that we didn't foresee accurately enough or carefully enough, and it's real. And least regrets is to get that fence in. And there are any number of other potential solutions, but it feels like the quickest and easiest thing to do. And we're only halfway through winter, so we don't want to plan for too long. We actually want to minimise the risk.
Councillor Mackel?
All due respect, Hamish, a kid that's able to throw a ball up into a basketball hoop will probably have a little bit more sense around water, and probably able to walk out of it. It's the younger kiddie that's at risk here.
Yep, yeah, that's a fair point. I accept that.
I think the overarching thing here is I think there's lessons to be learnt on what's happened here, and let's hopefully avoid this happening again by having the same scenario crop up in the future in any new subdivisions.
As mentioned before, we are looking as well in regards of the pumping regime to get the ponds quicker released of their water, and maybe a different discharge point as well. This will give us some more security as well when kids playing around.
Councillor Lovett?
I'm just going to say, I think I'll support your fence just going up the pond, because then it still allows kids to kick a ball around and stuff. I think that's a good start to see that going quickly.
All right. Yep.
Was too fast. Wastewater. We alerted you already last week in regards of the issues we had here in Tynwald around Catherine Street, Crow Street and other areas where we had sewer overflows through gully traps onto private property. This is as well, again, heavily related to the high groundwater table and the infiltration and inflow we are getting into our sewer network. We have done various investigations as well through the network, and we have done some pipe checking in between. At the moment, it's okay. It's not good, but we are still looking for some other areas throughout the paddocks to the downstream side when it goes over to Wilkins Street. There are some buried manholes between 50 centimeters and 1 meters below ground on farmland. We try to find them at the moment. They are highly likely not sealed, and with a high groundwater table we are getting a lot of infiltration into that as well. That's part of it. As mentioned from Hernando at the start, we have done a letter drop to the people in this area in Tynwald to have a look in regards of stormwater discharges into the wastewater network, and as well to get an understanding of the level of gully traps through heavy rainfall events. If the gully trap is not high enough, we are getting as well a lot of inflow and infiltration into that network. CCTV inspections are underway. I've just seen in the morning a CCTV inspection from quite a while ago with the water is pouring into the wastewater network. So we need to understand that and to address that as well. We are as well looking into monitoring devices which will give us an early warning in regards of wastewater levels rising into manholes, so they will be fixed in the manhole and the operators getting directly an alarm if the water level or wastewater level rises, which gives us an indication we need to go out and check it, it gives us the flow and the levels into it as well. So that's what's happening in that area at the moment. The other part is we have a wastewater model which is 10 years old at the moment. We need to upgrade that and to calibrate that model to get as well an understanding in regards of the developments occurred over the last 10 years, what kind of impact this had on the wastewater network, specifically here as well on Ashbury. And we will make then further decisions in regards of renewals or upgrades on pipes.
Thank you. Just on that alarm system you're putting in, or looking at putting in for when that water level rises, is there then a system in place, because we know what properties tend to be directly affected by that, an alert system for those properties so that they can be aware that this issue, unfortunately for them, may be possibility again?
Correct. So that's part of the exercise when we know that we can alert them, where we know already low-lying gully traps, low-lying properties, to make them aware of. Be careful, or we provide as well remediation. We have done sandbagging in the past as well to protect their property.
Your light went out. Mr. Mayor.
So at Wilkins Road at the ponds, what did the flow rate go up by when this was happening? It'll have a dry flow, it'll have a wet, raining flow.
Yeah, as mentioned before as well. So we will see definitely an increase in regards of flow through the heavy rainfall events, but I don't have a number at the moment. But we will give that to you next time round in regards of when we have normal flows compared to when we had heavy rainfall events.
Obviously, that would give you information as to how big a problem it is.
Yeah.
As to normal flow and rainfall flows, what's going in. I thought that'd be a key figure you would have. Then, when this flooding was occurring or backing up of the sewer lines, etc., I don't think it was raining at the time, and so there'll be no water coming off the roofs into the gully traps because it wasn't raining. So it has to be groundwater, I would assume, if I'm assuming right. So doing gully trap work might be pointless, perhaps?
Thank you. We had a similar issue here at Wellington Street just throughout a rainfall event near the school down there, and a resident complained as well in regards of a sewage spill coming out of their land, and we have investigated that, and they have done their full roof runoff into the gully trap. Maybe here it's different at Tynwald, but it's always a good indication that you get a fair understanding how your wastewater network behaves, and it's important to get the stormwater out of the wastewater network because that will give you relief in regards of new developments occurring who then can discharge.
Did you say that the school was putting into the gully trap?
No, at Wellington Street, close to that school, which is out there.
Oh, so it was a private
property.
An older property or a newer property?
Older property.
Because all these Tynwald ones would have been involved in the Right Pipe project 10 years ago, whatever it was now, but who knows what's happened in 10 years. So, yeah. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. And I think you alluded to it, looking at how your wastewater scheme, copes with increased stormwater and floodwater and things. My question is, were you happy, and is there any key learnings from our contractor and how they managed that crisis in Tynwald with regards to the wastewater, and what was that acceptable and it met your standards with regards to the contract requirements? And are there key learnings from that we can feedback?
I think in the first instance, yes, but there are always learnings around that, what can be done before this event occurs, and this is it's a reactive approach, what we have taken so far. We want to be more proactive and get a better understanding, and this is why we want to have these devices in place and have an understanding before this event occurs that we can protect properties as well.
And so our flows of communication too, I think is ACL, is that correct? Were good, the phone was answered in a timely fashion, the trucks were on the street in a timely fashion, and all the KPIs were met with regards to 1 hour or 2 hours or whatever they are. They were all met and adhered to under the contract.
The chair, yes, we're quite satisfied with how ACL approached and responded to the
Well, that's reassuring, isn't it? Because that'll come into consideration when we let it again. And when you said next time, you're going to let us know the flows, if you can let us know as soon as possible, because getting that information in a timely fashion helps us remember what it was about. If we get it in the next 2 months, well, heck, it's quite good to get it when it's available. So as soon as you get it, if you can flick it on, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I assume there'll be more information on this in the next meeting report as well, because this is obviously an ongoing issue. So.
Absolutely. So we will report back on the findings from ACL, on the investigations, what they are doing at the moment, and we will report back at the next meeting. Yes.
Cool. Thank you. And then it's just any other questions, is it after that? Yep. Anyone got anything else that's sort of not directly related to?
You haven't
Mr.
done
Mayor?
10.10, item 10, procurement in the agenda?
Thank you for the mayor to picking that up. We thought we covered that under the project itself, but it's a really good point. Thank you for that.
Well, I do have a question then.
Yep, please.
10.2 contracts awarded, and we did this at council. The first tender had 6, it says here, and the second had 9. So there's obviously some tenders that never made it to our papers, because we never saw that many tenders when we made decision.
When we prepare our tender report, we always put the number of tenderers in the report. So the number that you see in the report that you have in front of you is exactly the same numbers that are in the.
Well, let's take the wastewater, the water mains renewals. Said there was 9 tenderers. Well, we never saw 9 tenderers when we made decision. And the one above, we didn't see 6. We saw 5. The other one was 4.
That feels consistent with my memory as well. So let us have a look at that and see why that number is being
Sorry
listed
about that.
differently.
The rural water main was not sent to council because it was approved by Amish, because it's up within your delegation.
Okay, so you didn't see that one at all.
Oh, we never saw it at all then.
No,
So
not
it
the
was
second.
That's correct. Yes, it was under 1.5 million and within budget. So under Hamish's delegation, he approved that contract.
And it's here for your advice, but not for, it wasn't a council decision. But the other one saying there was 6, we just need to have a wee look at as well.
Yeah, I'm confusing with 2 different contracts then.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at that meeting we had, we were going to find out, we were told it's good shopping, but we were going to find out dollars per metre compared to last year's dollars per metre, or any other relevant way of gauging what last year's price or the year before's is to now.
We are coming prepared. So I was listening as well to the last council meeting, and we have done a comparison. So we didn't have any renewals in the last year program. The last renewals work was done in the financial year 2022-2023, and we looked into a comparison between what's happening on the water side and on the wastewater side. In comparison, on the wastewater side, we have seen a cost reduction between 30 and 60%. On the water side, we have seen a slight increase on the cost, and that's highly related to the pipe material PE, which is oil related, and though this is where the main cost sits on the water side, but the main part is really that we have seen a dramatic reduction on wastewater per meter. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and the difference between the 30% and 60% is on the different depths of the sewer pipes. So
Correct.
more shallow ones is probably 30% and the deeper ones is 60%. So it's a range depending on the depths. So, yeah.
Does anyone have any other questions they'd like to ask? No. Thank you, gentlemen. See you again in 6 weeks' time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
It's the end of the meeting, people. Thank you.